People on both sides of the political spectrum may agree with the notion that fake news exists, but banning it may be a little more complicated than some California state senators realized. RT's Natasha Sweet explains.
Governor Jerry Brown vetoes a fake news bill initially approved by both the California Assembly and State Senate. The basis? Well, Governor Brown says there's simply no reason for it. Senate Bill 1424, drafted by State Senator Dr. Richard Pan, would have created an advisory group to monitor alleged fake news spread onto social media. In a statement, Governor Brown says, quote, "The creation of a statutory group to examine this issue is not necessary." While the idea sounds nice, several groups opposing the bill brought up it may indeed infringe on the First Amendment. If passed, Senate Bill 1424 would have created an advisory committee by April 1st of 2019. The idea was to have someone from the Department of Justice, representatives from various social media platforms, and First Amendment scholars in the group. They would then monitor articles being spread onto the social media platforms. Facebook recently abandoned its trending news section, very similar to Twitter's. The feature was criticized after reports indicated human editors were biased against conservatives. Facebook has since fired those editors, replacing them with algorithms. A previous bill in the California legislature was aimed at having teachers in school distinguish between fake news and real news. That bill never made it past the Assembly Committee on Appropriations. In Los Angeles, Natasha Sweet, RT.
For more, we go to legal and media analyst Lionel. Lionel, thanks so much for joining us. Now, what are some of the problems associated with defining fake news?
The first one would be defining fake news. The best thing I can see is that if you try to implement a statute that prohibits or proscribes deceiving people, fake in not so much being counterfeit, but fake that tries to deceive, to falsely lure people away from the truth. Already I've just created situations that I can't even define. Here's the best question. How can you tell me, think of either an algorithm or a committee, that can surgically separate satire, parody, exaggeration, excusable neglect, excusable inaccuracy? When does that fake alarm trigger? And that's precisely the problem. We can't even define it.
Lionel, what are the problems, let's say, in a fake news advisory group?
One of the biggest problems by having a government organization, no matter who comprises this, determine a priori, ahead of time. We get into something which should scare everybody. It's called prior restraint. Censorship is one thing, and here's a distinction. Censorship is when you have said something and you feel the sting of it. You're arrested, you're sued, you said something, and then you address it. Prior restraint is we're going to set up a series of conditions, either through a tribunal, an algorithm, an AI, a bot, that will tell you ahead of time, actually, do not say this. Do not stray into this. Sometimes it's okay because we'll have, for example, nudity provisions, or you can't say these words. No, that's okay. But when you have a government organization or tribunal say ahead of time in a prior restraint model what you cannot say, it not only chills First Amendment freedoms, it freezes it. It's the worst thing that we as civil libertarians could ever imagine.
Lionel, obviously you seem to be concerned with the idea of prior restraint. Can you just talk a little bit more to that?
Right. The thing is that when the government should be loath to ever tell somebody, you can't say something. There has to be a clear and convincing reason. There has to be something that is a compelling governmental interest. These are all of the standards that courts have used to be able to tell you when you cannot say something. But for you to have a censorship bureau, and by the way, thank God for Governor Brown deciding against this. Read his reason. Based upon the recent studies, we find there's no reason for this. Okay, if that suffices, great. I don't know what that means, but hey, thank God it's gone. But when you have somebody who says, we're going to have, imagine the church lady sitting ahead of time and reviewing. What does this sound like? It's the worst nightmare of a totalitarian regime. You passing the censors, not reviewing what you said, but think about you doing your news broadcast, you penning a commentary, doing something where you have to pass the censors before it even goes out. It limits your ability to speak. It makes you second guess. It chills, it freezes, it stops, it thwarts. It obfuscates our ability to speak freely. It's the worst thing possible. But this is not going away. You're going to see more of this.
Lionel, we have about a minute left. I want you to talk about some of the innocent victims of this.
Exactly. Let me give you an example. I mentioned this before. Parody, exaggeration. There was a while back when somebody decided, this was, you might not remember this, but on the internet, people put up these controls for nudity. Nudity, we're going to stop nudity. There was a program on breastfeeding, innocent, actual mothers learning about how breastfeeding, and by virtue of this dragnet provision, innocent, actual tutorials were caught under this prohibition. So if I were to say, actually, no more, you cannot be fake. And you say, but it's not fake, it's a cartoon, it's an exaggeration, it's parody, it's satire. I'm lampooning something. Oh, no, that's fake. Now you've got to explain the gradations between exaggerated, between comedy. Think about, would Mark Twain be one day perhaps in a kind of a historical perspective? Think about Will Rogers. Think about parody, satire, political commentary, cartoons. When does it mislead? When is the fake meant to deceive, and when is it just not accurate? And again, we beg the question, who determines what is accurate? This is the most frightening consideration. And again, I say, you've not heard the end of this. Sad to say.
All right, Lionel, we're going to have to cut it there. Thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.